So question 12 says, determine the value or values that must be excluded as possible solutions. One of the things that happens is, remember, x represents a number. So the variable can be any number. But the thing is, when you do the calculations, you have to get an answer. And one of the things we have in math is we cannot divide by 0. So keep that in mind. We cannot actually divide by 0. So division by 0 is said to be undefined. What I mean by that is there's no answer. So if I gave you, say 8 divided by 2, you would say 2 goes in 8 4 times. Now to check it, you can say 4 times 2, it has to get you back to the 8. So does 4 times 2 give you 8? Yeah. So remember, you can check a division problem by using multiplication. So remember, we have that going on here. But now, on the other hand, if I gave you, say, 8 divided by 0, we may have an inkling to say that's 0. But the question is, does 0 times 0 get you back to 8? And notice how that's not true. We may have well, if it's not 0, then it must be 8. Well, 8 divided by 0, if you say it's 8, well, 8 times 0, does that give you 8? So notice that this is false, and this is false. It's not a true statement. So the question is, when I do 8 divided by 0, the question is what times 0 actually gives you 8? Notice how this is not possible, because we know that when you multiply by 0, the answer is always 0. So this is going to be considered undefined. So what happens is you can't get an answer. So we call that a domain restriction, or an exclusion, if you will. So if I look at this problem over here, notice how we have x's on the bottom. So the question is, what makes the denominator equal to 0? So what I can do is set up this as x plus 5 is equal to 0. And I can set x minus 5 equal to 0. And I can set x squared minus 25 equal to 0. Now, this is a linear equation. What makes this linear equation equal to 0? Well, that would be x equals a negative 5. So you can subtract 5 on both sides, if you will, and get that. So what would make this equation equal to 0? Notice how that would be x equals 5. 5 minus 5 would be 0. So those would be exclusions. Notice how x squared minus 25 is equal to 0. This is a difference of squares. So this actually factors into x minus 5 times x plus 5 equals 0. So notice these are the same factors. So but notice how for this, if x equals 5, this is going to make this whole thing turn to 0. If x equals negative 5, this is going to turn this whole thing into 0 as well. So notice that there's two exclusions. We're going to exclude those two values. So we're going to exclude negative 5 and also 5. Those will be our exclusions. Those are going to be the excluded values. So the excluded values are negative 5 and 5.